Hi, my name's Alexia. I live in Naples, but now I'm in New York for a week. And I wanted to celebrate life and see you at every day on June the 12th.
Hi, we are Florence
Nelson
and Morgan.
Asanowski.
We are standing in front of the Olympic Stadium, which was built for the 1976 Olympics.
Where I worked as a crowd control security guard right out of high school.
We are watching from Montreal, Quebec, Canada.
Happy Familial Dysautonomia Awareness Day. Yay! From Positive Exposure, we love you. Hi, Samantha. Bye.
Hi, I'm Michelle.
I'm Jamal. I'm watching the FD from Israel.
Israel, Ranana. Hi, everyone.
Hi everyone.
In the sunshine,
In the sunshine at the hotel.
where we're staying for a little break.
And we're wishing you good day.
From everybody, good luck with 2022 FD Day. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Rebecca, and my parents and I will be watching FD Day virtually from Rybrook, New York.
Hi, it's Faye and Sam from New York City. Have a great FD Day.
Hi, my name is Daryl Schwartzberg, and in memory of my brother Stevie, I am jumping for FD Day. Mini jump.
Hi, my name is Efrat Karmi, and I'm a board member of the Israeli Coalition for Rare Diseases organizations. On behalf of our coalition, I want to congratulate all of you for the hard and great work you are doing in raising awareness for FD, and especially our own Israeli FD organization. I wish soon we will have a world free of FD and all other rare diseases. Have a great FD International Awareness Day.
Hi, we're the Sachs family.
Stacy.
Adam.
Jackson.
Aiden.
And we're coming to you from Brookville, Maryland.
And thanks to you all for everything you do for our families.
We're the Landau's from New York, looking forward to FD Day.
Hi, I'm Debbie Scheinberg, watching from West Hartford, Connecticut. I'm also known as Samantha Myers' Aunt Deb and Faye Ginsburg's sister. Thank you so much to Faye for all she does for the foundation, and a happy birthday to my brother-in-law, Fred Myers.
I am Veronica Segal from São Paulo, Brazil. I'm happy that I can join FD Day by internet. That's wonderful since I can't travel anymore. Happy to see you guys. Bye.
Hi, I'm Ivan.
And I'm Zoe.
And we are the Stillman.
We're watching from Phoenix, Arizona.
Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Faye Ginsburg. In addition to my work as an anthropology professor at New York University, I'm honored to be serving my 10th year as president of the Familial Dysautonomia Foundation, and especially to be the mother of Samantha Myers, who teaches me every day about the challenges of FD and how to sustain a positive attitude when things are difficult. It is my pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of the foundation, founded in 1951 by a handful of FD families. To welcome our fellow travelers from Israel, we're really excited for the first time this year to offer a live simultaneous translation of FD Day in Hebrew. To access the Hebrew translation, and thank you to our interpreters, click on the globe icon on Zoom at the bottom of the screen and select the Hebrew option. I hope you're enjoying these video greetings from today's families around the world. We want to know where you are watching from, so please take a minute to respond to the poll popping up on your screen. This is our 37th annual FD Day, and this is our third virtual version, a third virtual version of this event. Let us know where you are. I'm sitting in my apartment in Greenwich Village, Manhattan. Going virtual has enabled us to have so many more of you participating than when we had FD Day in person, although we missed that. Typically, 150 people attended those events. Last year's virtual event brought together over 300 people from 150 households, hailing from 25 states and 9 countries on 5 continents. Pretty amazing for a rare disease. It turned out to be a very lively community building occasion as we all had an opportunity to learn from our medical and scientific teams and to connect with each other. We're thrilled to have people joining us from so many places. Clearly, going virtual has been one of the rare silver linings of the pandemic. The foundation has achieved a number of significant milestones in our 7 decades. In 1970, the Dysautonomia Center was launched at NYU Langone Medical Center with our support. Through greatly improved medical care under the guidance first of Dr. Felicia Axelrod and now Dr. Horacio Kaufman, FD was transformed from a fatal childhood disease to a chronic condition that people live with for decades. We've also been collaborating with our colleagues in Israel and over the years have invested millions of dollars in research with significant results, including in 2001, the identification of the mutation that causes FD. Since then, the availability of genetic testing has resulted in the births of healthy babies worldwide. Additionally, this genetic knowledge has been foundational to some of the cutting-edge emerging treatments that you'll be hearing about today. Before turning things over to our next speaker, some thanks are in order. We are so fortunate to have the talented leadership of Dr. Kaufman, director of the NYU Dysautonomia Center, and the team he directs. We are delighted to welcome Associate Director Dr. Alejandro Gonzalez Duarte, Carl Seaman, Family Clinical Associate Professor of Dysautonomia Treatment and Research, who has joined the center from Mexico City, bringing her outstanding knowledge of FD as both a clinician and a researcher. Thanks as well to Dr. Patricio Millar Vernetti and our committed nurse practitioners, Kaya Delamo and Zina Khan, who are not only extraordinary clinicians, but have welcomed a social worker in training to the center and organized the FD Artist Awards for today. Our gratitude to program coordinator Leanne Lugg, who has kept all the balls in the air, and intern Nikki Kuipers. We're profoundly grateful to all of them and the rest of the team at the treatment center, as well as the ongoing contributions of our scientific advisory board, especially the dynamic leadership of our co-chairs, Dr. Adrian Gilbert, FD parent, and Vice President of Pharmaceutical Development at Neuroderm in Israel, and Dr. Francis Lefcourt, Research Professor of Cell Biology and Neuroscience and Head of the Lefcourt Lab at Montana State University. We are really blessed to have attracted so many brilliant people to our cause. Let me also express my profound appreciation to our foundation's devoted and resourceful board of directors who do so much to ensure that we maintain a consistent level of support for the Dysautonomia Center and our community at large. Huge thanks to them and the many people that they have helped motivate to contribute to our cause through lively events, social media campaigns, and our annual journal, raising not only money, but spirits and awareness as well. In particular, I want to acknowledge an extraordinary recent gift of $500,000 over 5 years for the Claire and Philip Wexler Research Fund, named in memory of board member Paul Wexler's parents. The fund is designed to support translational research initiatives that bring work from the laboratory to our community, with the goal of enhancing and extending the lives of those impacted by FD. The inaugural grant went this year to Dr. Francis Lefcourt to sustain her critical gene therapy research project that you'll be hearing about momentarily, along with other work. Finally, I am deeply appreciative of our extremely capable and dedicated executive director, Lainey Etkind, has done so much for us, and our excellent foundation team, Abelena Prabhukaj and Erin Duddy, for exceptional work throughout the year and on today's event. Once again, it is such a pleasure to welcome you today, and I turn things over to Lainey.
Good morning. I'm delighted to join Faye in welcoming everyone to FD Day 2022, the Foundation's 37th year of hosting this annual conference and our 3rd year of offering FD Day virtually. This is my 5th FD Day. How many FD Days have you attended? Please take a moment to answer the poll that will pop up on your screen. While we're waiting for the results to tabulate, I will tell you a little more about the platform on which you are viewing FD Day this year. Hopefully you watched the welcome video, which provided a brief overview on how to navigate the site. But if at any time you experience technical difficulties, please visit the information desk, which you can access in the virtual lobby or on the info icon at the top of your screen. You will notice a chat box at the left-hand side of your screen. When you visit the live chat, you can initiate a text, audio, or video conversation with anyone else currently in the FD Day platform. You can also create custom and private chats. Have fun chatting. Don't forget to visit our FD Day photo booth, where you can take fun photos, boomerangs, and GIFs, and post them and share them on social media. You can access the photo booth from the lobby or by clicking on the icon at the top of the screen. Speaking of social media, let's all boost FD visibility today by posting on our favorite social media channel and using the hashtag FDDay2022. Now I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank our very generous FD Day sponsors. Can you post the slide, please? Thanks. Heartfelt thanks to our partner, PTC Therapeutics, our supporters, Faye Ginsberg and Fred Myers, Debbie Scheinberg, Howard and Tova Weiser, our friends Laura, Tom, and Barbara Bale, Daniel, Dina, and Rafi Landau, and Town Total Compounding Center. Support from these donors helps offset the cost of FD Day, enabling the foundation to dedicate more resources to medical care, scientific research, education, and outreach, as well as community building programs and activities. If you'd like to support FD Day or contribute to the FD Foundation, please click on the support tab at the top of your screen. Before I introduce today's program, I want to take a moment to tell you about a very popular initiative sponsored by the Foundation. Early in the pandemic, we began offering virtual hangouts to help ease the social isolation that many people with FD were experiencing. As of this January, we have a fabulous new facilitator, Liza Freed, who is currently leading 4 different groups. We are getting lots of positive feedback from the participants and their families. If you're not currently participating in a group and would like to learn more, please contact the Foundation office. Additionally, Liza, sorry, just lost my screen, okay. Additionally, Liza, working with the committee from the FD community, has begun to organize a monthly virtual social activity open to all folks with FD. The next event is this coming Thursday evening, June 16th. For more information, please contact the Foundation. As Faye mentioned earlier, one of the key benefits of keeping FD Day virtual, besides not having to wear masks, is that we can truly embrace the international scope of our FD community and include families, clinicians, researchers, and friends from all over the world. The FD Foundation here in New York is proud to partner with our international chapters, and we have invited each of them to share a message today.
Hi, my name is Rosin Jacobs. I'm co-chair of the English chapter and have a daughter called Natasha with FD, and she happens to be 31 tomorrow. We are a small chapter but work hard supporting all the FD families in the UK. We have struggled, as I'm sure like a lot of you, trying to raise funds over the last year, but one of our members of the charity had an idea to raise awareness in the Jewish community and to hope gain some donations by supporting Maccabi Football League. It was such fun being invited to their final. The teams were dressed in FD t-shirts, and so were we. And it was great mixing with the community, explaining what FD was all about, raising awareness, and also raising money at that time. This also gave us access to newspapers promoting the league and ourselves. The other exciting thing which we have now got is that in the next day or so, we will have our first telemedicine kit arrive in the UK, and this is thanks to Zenith's patience with me due to my lack of IT knowledge. Soon we'll be starting these consultations in conjunction with UCH Hospital, and we are so grateful to the support of the American chapter and also building bridges across the pond. Thanks, Lancy. With the gains in technology and the world becoming much smaller, we thank you, Dr. Kaufman, and your team for making us feel supported and not alone in the FD world. Thank you.
Hello, I am Florence Freed, President of the Montreal chapter of Dysautonomia. I hope that you and your family have been well in this past year. Since the last FD Day, the social climate has only slightly improved. And as an organization, we continue our efforts to raise money for FD in these difficult times. We have moved as much as possible to online announcements and encouraging donors to make their contributions online. We do, however, continue to support telephone and mail-in donations. Excitedly, this past year, the Schwartzberg family of Edmonton ran a successful campaign known to many of you as the Jump Box Challenge. This challenge, in honor of their late son, Stephen, who enjoyed a jumping exercise onto the top of a box. Using social media, the challenge encouraged people to duplicate the box jump and contribute to the Jump Box campaign. Over $40,000 was raised. This money continues to fund the mental health program at the New York University FD Treatment Center. We hope that the next year will be less stressful and our fundraising efforts can include more in-person social events. Enjoy the FD Day.
Shalom, I'm Amichai Greenwald from Israel, a director of the Israeli Association for Familial Dysautonomia. I'm sorry for my English, really sorry, but it was very, very important to us, for us to thanks to whom organized the FD and send blessing all the people and the event conference. It's just 5 months since the board required me to move forward with the mission to be a united support community. And I can say it's a new word for me, and it's a big honor to be a part from the Israeli group who does everything for make better for the people who deal with FD and all the community, to be a community and make better and make do for the people in the community. The second mission is to do all we can for research and for the FD Medical Center. We employed 2 volunteers to help us with the data cares for the research. The third mission, we developed innovative ideas and projects such as home care, life-saving watch, relaxing vacation, and more as much as we can. Our ability to deal with the phenomenal challenge that the FD presents us, it's both in dealing in the physical difficulties and we especially deal with the research challenge treatment method. That ability grows as much as we know to cooperate and act together. And I can say as much as remember that we all one big family, and it's a sign that we are a family. Many thanks to all organizations and everyone who involved in drug research and concerned for the quality of care. Our prayers all for success, and we are always available for the benefit as any cause as we needed. Thank you for this FD Day. We sent our blessing from the Israeli Association for familial dysautonomia, all our members in the world. Thank you.
And now that we've heard from our international chapters, we'd like to hear from you. It's time for our next poll. Please tell us your relationship to FD. While we're waiting for the results to tabulate, let's take a quick overview of today's program. In just a few moments, we will hear updates on FD medical care from Dr. Horatio Kaufman and his fabulous team at the Dysautonomia Center at NYU Langone. The segment after that will feature presentations from several of our esteemed scientists on their current research. Next, we have reserved about 45 minutes for a live Q&A with our clinicians and scientists. Some of you sent questions in advance. If you have questions during the program, you may add them into the Q&A box on the Zoom chat. A member of the FD Day team will be monitoring the box throughout the day and will share questions with the panel as time allows. Following the Q&A, we will meet this year's Distinguished Award winners, view a presentation of the FD Day art competition, The World Through My Eyes, and present the inaugural FD Champion Award. At the conclusion of the FD Day program, everyone is invited to the virtual lounge on the VFairs platform, where FD teens and adults can attend the FD after party featuring virtual games and activities, and parents and others may wish to join the schmooze with Dr. Alejandra Gonzalez Duarte. Both of these programs will be hosted on Zoom, so everyone can see and interact with one another. More details on this later. Thanks everyone for participating in the polls. Here is the result of poll number 2. 24% of the attendees have FD, 43% are a parent or spouse, 12% are another relative, 1% has a loved one, and 3% are a physician, nurse, therapist, or healthcare provider. Thanks for that result. And we will get back to the other results later on in the program. So thanks everyone for participating in these fun polls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Horatio Kaufman, Director of the Dysautonomia Center at NYU Langone.
So good morning or good afternoon, everybody, depending which part of the world you're in. Thank you so much for tuning in, and welcome to the 2022 FD Day. As you heard, it's the 37th FD Day, has been going on for 37 years. And as you remember, it's the second Sunday of June when the FD community always meets to celebrate another year. Now, I also miss a little bit, although these online FD days have increased the amount of people that can participate. I think we all miss a little bit the face-to-face connection. And today we have, at least for the FD team, we are all together here at the center. So without much ado, I want to start by telling you the statistics and a little bit of the new treatments. Can I share the screen now? Yes, thank you. So first you're gonna hear me with a little bit of the, can I move this? Yes. So this one is the one on, right? So as I told you, I'm gonna tell you the statistics and then the new treatment updates. Then you will hear Dr. Gonzalez Duarte to talk about some clinical care update. And then Patricio Millar will review non-pharmacological treatment. Zinit Khan will tell you about COVID, and Kaya Dalamo, our other nurse practitioner, will tell you a little bit about a new crisis scale. And after that, as you heard, we'll have a Q&A period, and we will mix this time basic science and clinicians. So we will have Francis and Sue together also with all the clinicians, including Batel Bar from Israel and Lila Raju, who's a cornea specialist. So let me start, as I've been doing for 15 years, with the statistics, with the population statistics. Well, there were no, you're seeing the thing, okay. So this year there were no, from 21 to 22, there were no new births. Is the first time that there are no new births, but there were 2 newly diagnosed girls in Mexico, one 12 years old and one 14 years old. We had not been identified before. There are altogether 310 patients with FD living worldwide. So this little graph shows the distribution of the patients. As you see, almost 199 patients are younger than 25 years old, and 211 are older than 25 years old. The oldest patient is 64, the youngest is 4, as you see here, and then the graph here shows each age, which is described here in the horizontal axis, each age and the number of patients at each age. You see at age 13, there are 15 patients, age 24, there are 16, age 30, there are 19, and so on. There are slightly more females than males. 54% are females and 46% are males. Now, patients are distributed throughout the world from North America, Canada and the US, and South America, Brazil and Argentina, to Europe, including Austria, France, Germany, Belgium, UK, and Israel, and Australia. Now, let me see, is this moving? One thing I want to tell you and emphasize, and you can see in the research booklet, that there's a new Center of Excellence for FD in Mexico, led by Dr. Maru Godinez, and so that's big news, and you can read about it in the research booklet. Dr. Briceño will be, or Dr. Godinez will be with us. She's here in New York and will be 7 months with us, thanks to the support of the foundation, and then she will continue directing the new center in Mexico. I want to tell you, and there were some questions from the audience, that our statistics are good. There is better survival. What this, of the population, what this slide shows is a Kaplan-Meier curve of survival. What you see in the horizontal axis is the age of the population, and the percent survival in the vertical axis. So as you can see, the survival for patients born in the last 2 decades has increased significantly, and today 85% of patients with FD survive into adulthood, a percentage much higher than in previous decades. Each of these lines represent the survival in a specific period, as you see, 1950 from 70, 60 to 80, 1980 to 99, and the last in red is the survival in the last 20 years. So these statistics are encouraging, and we think that the advantage or the reason for these good results is the fact that FD clinical care and basic research are closely connected. We now have 4 centers around the world of excellence that see patients, where patients are treated, and there the information is centralized, as you know, in a database with all the centers having access, and patients consent to give biological samples, either blood or skin or feces, and that is used by basic scientists to study a number of things. One interesting or very interesting study supported by NIH and led by Francis Lefcourt in Montana was a study of the gut microbiome in patients with FD. You'll see there are very interesting results there. Francis is going to mention that, but you can also read that in the research booklet. We are also using blood samples to study other genes that are affected in FD. And again, there's a new program studying the connection with, or the potential connection with Hirschsprung disease, which is a disease that affects the nervous system in the gut and has a lot of similarities with FD, and that Dr. Chatterjee here at NYU will be studying. There are also two interesting projects in making FD stem cells from fibroblasts, one in Israel and one in the US. And again, you can read about that and the usefulness of stem cells in the research booklet. Now, there are also FD models, animal models, and the useful thing is that new drugs that are developed can be tested in these FD mice models that were developed by basic scientists, by Sue and Elisabetta and Francis and a whole dedicated team. And then the drugs can be tried first in these animal models, and then they can be translated and tested in clinical trials in patients. So what our advantages are? The clinical database with 50 years of medical history of 700 patients, the personalized treatment by a dedicated clinical team, that close collaboration I was mentioning, and the fact that we have animal models for new therapeutic agents and the possibility of doing clinical trials. So what about new drug treatments, which is, I'm sure, what everybody wants to hear. So I will briefly tell you what's new and in the pipeline. As you're aware, there are two types of drugs. The symptomatic drugs, and those target symptoms or treatments, and they, meaning things that you feel, and they are supposed to make you feel better right away. Now, the second type of treatments are disease-modifying treatments. Those target the cause rather than the symptoms, and they may prevent or reverse the worsening. But it's important to remember that they may not make you feel immediately better. In fact, they may even have side effects until they can do what they can do. So we are working on both types of treatments at the center. So in terms of symptomatic treatment, we are focusing on what we call breakthrough autonomic crises. There are a number of patients that even without a trigger, an infectious or other type of trigger, may have repeated or recurrent autonomic crises that appear to be emotional, or at least there is no obvious trigger for that. So for those, we want to use dexmedetomidine now, or Precedex. You are aware that dexmedetomidine has been used for autonomic crisis, has been a game changer, and many of you may have experienced the quickness with which the symptoms are relieved. Now, the problem is that although there is rapid relief, you have to be in the hospital for this to happen, and you must be in the ICU because the treatment is intravenous. Now, we now have a new formulation of Precedex or dexmedetomidine, which is a sublingual film. So we think we can do this at home. We can try this at home. And to do this, we'll do a clinical trial where you will have the medication, and when and if you develop an autonomic crisis, you will contact the center. A decision will be made, whether a clinician will guide you from there, and a decision will be made whether you take the sublingual film, and you will be monitored all this time. You will be monitored. The study will have a number of innovations, all that again at home, like an Apple Watch and a number of other gadgets that will measure not only the blood pressure and the heart rate, but a few other things. And most importantly, there will be a scale that you will be feeling together with the clinicians to assess the severity of the crisis. And Kaya Dalamo will briefly tell you a little bit about that scale today. And of course, you will be told more about that. So this trial will start soon, will be at home, and we hope it will be a significant, will provide significant benefit to patients. Now, what about disease-modifying treatments, right? The ones we are most urgent to try to do. Well, you're all aware that FD is due to a genetic mutation, right? Now, genes, as you know, are the blueprints to make the body's protein. Proteins are large molecules that have a lot of clinical roles in the body. There are a lot of proteins, up to 400,000. Now, in FD, there is a mutation, there is a mistake in the blueprint of just one protein. It's called elongator protein 1, or ELP1. The gene that makes this protein has a mutation, and the specific defect is in something called splicing. So there is missplicing for this protein. You've heard Sue explaining this many times. And because of that missplicing, the amount of ELP1 protein that is produced in the body in people with FD is low, is very low, to the point that some neurons during development, during embryogenesis, actually don't even develop. And at birth, they haven't appeared normally. Now, that is a difficult time to intervene. However, during life, some neurons that did develop, they do get sick over time. And we believe we have strong evidence, experimental and some clinical evidence, suggesting that during life, the progressive visual loss and the imbalance that people with FD suffer is due to the lack or the low levels of this protein in different tissues. So how can we intervene with patients? How can we modify this? Well, we know, as I mentioned, that without treatment, there is progressive visual loss and progressive imbalance. We think that if we increase the amount of the protein by correcting the splicing defect that's in the genetic mutation, we believe that the increase in protein will be, that by fixing that gene, will produce more protein and will be able to preserve vision and balance. So what is the evidence? Well, we know that ELP1 rescue the phenotype in mice. This is a scientific way of saying that if you fix the genetic defect during fetal development, the phenotype is rescued, and mice that were going to die will not die. Francis can also show that the more ELP1 can potentially save retinal cells in the eye. And there is also new data from Sue's lab showing that mice treated by increasing ELP1, by fixing the defect, can actually walk better. So this is not proven in humans yet, and that's why we need a clinical trial. And how can we do those trials? Well, you've been listening about this for quite a while, so I'm going to review with you very briefly where we are today. We have three ways of three complementary approaches where we can fix the genetic defect and increase the amount of L1 protein. The simplest one is a pill that is a small molecule, is derived from kinetin, a compound that corrects splicing, something that was reported by Sue in 2004, 18 years ago, is a splicing enhancer, and you will hear more about that today. That initial compound was, there was a lot of development in 10 years, and I'll show you something in a second, and that compound that initially was just a proof of concept now is 10,000 times more potent and more efficient in increasing the protein. Has not been tried in humans yet. We hope that's going to be soon. Sue will tell you a little more about that. The second way, which you have heard, that can correct the splicing defect and increase protein is with a synthetic drug called ASO, or antisense oligonucleotide. These antisense are synthetic drugs similar to RNA, but a little snippet. They bind to the RNA and temporarily fix the problem, repair the sort of reprogram the cell, and allows more of the normal protein to be made. Now, ASOs, these same type of compounds, were used by Adrian Krainer, a scientist working at Cold Spring Harbor. He designed one of these compounds to fix spinal muscular atrophy and other genetic disease, also due to a low protein. Well, he was very successful with that. That has changed the prognosis, and he's trying to repeat the same success. He designed another ASO that also corrects a splicing defect. The compound has to be given every 4 months, is given inside the spinal cord, in the spinal fluid around the cord. And the important thing here, and I'll show you a little more, is that there's a foundation called N. Lorem Foundation. This foundation is funded by the developers of the drug for SMA, and they have taken the commitment to develop this ASO for familial dysautonomia to be tried in one patient, and currently the toxicology is being finished, and we hope that by the end of the year or earlier we'll be able to test this in the first patient. Now, the third way to fix this compound is using a viral vector. Now, the vector, the viral vector, is like the transport. The gene, the normal gene, is put inside the virus, the normal L1 gene. That virus is injected to the body either through the blood or directly in the eye or in the spinal fluid, that infects the cell and installs the new gene that is transported by the virus and corrects the defects. Francis, and I'll show you something in a second, Francis and the team has shown that this can be done in the eye. So for any of these compounds in the clinical trials, what we will do is monitor vision and monitor walking, meaning the imbalance and the ability to see, to determine if the drug is effective. So going back, and Sue will show you a little more of this. This shows the optimization that initial compound that derived of kinetin went through in the last 10 years, first with NIH and then always with Massachusetts General under Sue's direction. And you see that that initial compound is now 10,000 times more potent. In terms of the ASO that I was telling you, this shows the structure of the ASO that Adrian Krainer developed for spinal muscular atrophy. It's called Spinraza and is approved. The one he developed for FD is very similar structurally, and we also hope to try it. And finally, I have a very simple cartoon to remind you this thing that, you know, it's still for many of you and even for us sound like science fiction, and is the idea that you put a normal gene inside the virus. The virus acts like a transport, is taken by the cell, and then the new genetic material is incorporated in that cell and essentially cures the defect. In terms of the retina, the idea of gene therapy is to put it directly in the eye, to inject it directly in the eye, so it could work here in the retina with a normal copy of the gene. So in summary, we have a robust clinical research platform. We are combining clinical and basic research, and we have new therapies in the pipeline that are about to enter clinical trials. So we think there are good reasons to be very optimistic, and we hope to be able to achieve all these goals we have set ourselves up. So you will have opportunity to ask questions about these treatments in the Q&A, and of course you'll have the actual basic scientists that develop this to ask a lot of the questions. And if you want to know more, there is a new research booklet that you are all able to download already that describes many of the things I told you in detail. And again, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. So thank you very much. And now I want to introduce our next speaker, the new co-director. You know, until yesterday, she was the associate director. Now she's the co-director of the center, Dr. Alejandra González Duarte. We are happy to have her. And Alejandra, take it away. Thank you.
So for those of you that do not have that I have not had yet the fortune of meeting, I am the co-director of the NYU Dysautonomia Center. However, I met some of you 16 years ago during my fellowship at NYU with Dr. Kaufman. I can't tell you how happy I am to be back at the center. Let's start talking about our current population. Our most powerful tool is our FD database. It keeps track of all the information of FD patients in real time. As you heard from Dr. Kaufman, we have now 310 active patients. The majority of them are in between 16 and 24 and 44 years old. This implies that patients are not only living longer, but we are now seeing more patients with non-FD medical age-related illnesses, such as gout, osteoporosis, and type 2 diabetes. For this aging population, our screening protocols are continually being updated. We are in constant communication with the FD community and care partners. So let's have a look at where those calls originate. We get calls from the emergency departments, from the ICU, from the medical providers, other facilities like rehab, and home calls. These calls all come on a daily basis, and almost half of the families live in the US, whereas the rest remain international. I do want to emphasize the importance of working early with the local medical teams because they are our boots on the ground. As a result of the pandemic, annual visits have been split into virtual and office visits. We have 49 in-person annual visits and 74 virtual telemedicine visits last year, around more than 143 visits total. Almost half of these visits, at least 20 visits, were from patients who had been lost for follow-up, who have now reestablished care after not being seen for many years because it was too difficult to travel to the center. We are happy to welcome those 20 patients back. We also receive over 100 telemedicine consultations per year. Infections such as cellulitis, osteomyelitis, or dental abscesses were the most common causes, followed by COVID infection disease and its complications. We are using our telehealth kits and home-use medical devices to take critical measurements that we need to assess people for medical problems at their homes. Now, let me tell you about hospitalizations. We had 563 days at the hospital of patients that were admitted either in a pediatric or a medical ICU. At any given day, we have 1 or 2 patients that are monitored daily by our center. The most common causes of admission were the autonomic crisis and its complications, particularly aspiration pneumonia and electrolyte imbalance that resulted in altered mental status or acute kidney injury. It's important to remind us the importance of being careful while the patients are eating and also to be current in the CPR protocols. In the center, we observe around 80 surgical procedures, ranging from major procedures such as spinal fusion to difficult tooth extractions, RG tube repairs. Colonoscopies and bronchoscopies were also common procedures. We also discussed the advantages and disadvantages of 3 organ transplants with surgical specialist teams. In 8 of the individuals, there were seizures or movement disorders of new onset. Surprisingly, in one case, this was provoked by an antibiotic, and it was resolved when we discontinued the treatment. Also, 2 patients showed involuntary movements that were associated to the COVID-19 infection, and the movements disappeared gradually. Thank you for your interest in learning more about the work that we do at the center. In the next minutes, Dr. Patricio Millar, a member of our FD clinical team, will remind you of the non-pharmacologic strategies that can be helpful in FD crisis management, and he will also ask you which ones are you using more frequently. Thank you.
Hey everybody, thank you very much, Alejandra. So let's see. Whenever we have a patient visiting the center or whenever somebody calls, besides medications, we always try to give non-pharmacological interventions that may also help alleviate their symptoms. So I want to take this opportunity to review some of these with you. And we also want to hear what works from you. So we're going to be pulling up some polls in between the slides so you can share with us this information. Let me remind you that you can mark several options from each question. And if there's something that you don't find on the screen, feel free to write that up in the Q&A section so we can learn as well. If you're curious about how any of these techniques, maneuvers, or interventions may work, please ask about that in the Q&A section, and we'll be very glad to discuss that with you. So whenever a patient has an autonomic crisis, we always try to look for a trigger for that. We always try to look for injuries, infections, and sometimes these can be provoked by emotions, either negative emotions like anxiety or getting too excited about something. So when a patient has an autonomic crisis, we know that the medications work, but they may take some time to start acting. So there are certain maneuvers that people with FD can make that can help alleviate the unpleasant feelings brought on by the crisis, or even help avoid them altogether. So, went too fast and too low. Here we go. So besides taking medications, what helps with your crisis? Let us know in the poll. Some people do guided breathing exercises, meditation, like doing guided imagery meditation, trying to get distracted by watching a show or listening to music. And some people tell us that sneezing helps end their crisis as well. If there's anything else that you don't see here in the poll, you can always write in the Q&A box, and we'll be happy to learn from that. Okay, let's see. People are still voting that. This is very helpful. I love this. A lot of people like watching shows and listening to music. I want to hear later what's your favorite song. There's a lot of people that benefit from sneezing. That's fantastic. And we have some breathing and meditation. Okay, I think that's almost everybody who answered. Thank you very much. Here we go. Here are the results, so you can see. And we're also going to be collecting the results from this survey, and we're going to be posting them in the blog as well. We want you to learn. Maybe there's one of these techniques that you didn't know. Maybe it helps you. And at the same time, we want to help to learn what works from you, and we can share it with everybody as well. Okay, so moving on. Another very frequent problem that people with FD have is that when they stand up, their blood pressure goes down. And if this gets severe enough, they start getting dizzy, lightheaded, may lead to fainting, and this makes it very difficult to walk, get around, and do your daily activities. This can get particularly worse during warm weather if you're not very well hydrated or if you're losing fluid. And the fastest way to lose fluid is when people have diarrhea, which is a very common problem. So when your blood pressure is down, do you use any of these techniques, like adding extra salt to your food or feeds, getting extra fluid boluses? Some people tell us that when they are chewing on something, this helps bring their blood pressure up. And of course, that laying down is the fastest way to bring your blood pressure back up. And while you're still voting on the polls, let me remind you that if you're awake and you're laying down and your blood pressure is still very low, that can be a very big red flag that either you are very dehydrated or there's a very bad infection going on. So you should call the on-call center and let us know how you're feeling. So let's see, people are still voting here. A lot of people respond to fluid boluses. Let's see how it's going. Lying down is a very big one. Let's get a few more seconds to give everybody a chance to answer the poll. And again, you can mark more than one option. If there's something here that you do works for you and you don't see it, write it in the Q&A box and you'll be glad to review those later. Okay, it seems like everybody finished choosing their questions. Oh, here we go. A lot of people, most people benefit from the fluid boluses and from laying down. There's few people that benefit from chewing. This can increase your blood pressure while you're masticating, although it's short-lived and it will only continue to happen while you're still chewing. But it may be something that if you eat by mouth may be helpful. And adding salt, of course, to your meals can help bring the blood pressure back up by increasing the fluid absorption. So finally, when people with FD get sick or they get admitted to the hospital, laying in bed for a long time, it can make your lung function get worse. So actively moving the air in and out of your lungs can help keep your lungs healthy. So whenever you're in these situations, do you do any of the following to help keep your lungs healthy? Participating in physical therapy and getting out of bed is one of the best ways to do this, but we understand that if you're sick or if you're in a hospital, it may not be possible for you or permitted to do that. Singing, getting the air out of your lungs. I know a lot of you like singing. I'm very good at singing, but only in the shower for some reason. Participating in music therapy, again, doing breathing exercises, getting the air in and out, blowing bubbles or blowing pinwheels for the younger patients. And again, if there's anything else that you learn that you do and you'd like to share with us, just write it away in the Q&A box. Okay, so we're seeing people are still voting and sharing the results. A lot of people try to participate in physical therapy, get out of bed. Breathing exercises seem to be very helpful. Well, some people sing. Blowing bubbles or pinwheels, that's also there. So let's see, I think everybody's done with this pause. So you can see the results. And again, we're going to be posting these results in the blog. And if we see more things that work for you, we'll let you know. If you have any questions about how is the mechanism, about how these interventions, these maneuvers helping you, let us know in the Q&A section, and we'll be very glad to discuss that with you as well. Okay, so up next, Kaya Dalamo, one of our fantastic nurse practitioners, is going to be talking about an autonomic crisis rating scale, which will let us would hopefully help us know how severe crises are and how well they are responding to treatment. Okay, thank you for your time, and Kaya, take it away.
All right. Hello, my name is Kaya. I'd love to take this opportunity to talk to you a little bit more about that autonomic crisis symptom assessment scale. So why is the use of a scale important? Because we know that crisis is very complicated sometimes. The causes are countless and that every patient is different. And with every patient presenting a little differently, we recognize that although there's a cluster of signs that often come together, not all have to be present every time, and they also vary from person to person and even from time to time. They typically include high blood pressure, fast heartbeat, skin flushing, blotching, sweating, a display of severe distress, and uncontrolled nausea, retching, and vomiting. This wide presentation creates a lot of difficulty in capturing all of the signs and then tracking them to resolution. And granted, the signs and symptoms can also be from other causes, which is equally important to find out. So Access can help reveal that too, like when all other signs and symptoms are stopped, but nausea continues. In that case, perhaps there's another cause of nausea that caused the crisis and needs to be determined. So Access can be used as a gauge. It allows very clear pre and post drug assessment and helps to clarify if certain medications are helpful or not, in which ways that they're helpful, and to help assess their safety, as you can see what the exact response is concerning decrease in blood pressure and heart rate, and also possible dangerous adverse effects of certain medications that can decrease breathing and oxygen saturation. So, there we go. So here's the scale. It might look like a lot at first glance, but it's very simple. You start by recording the date and time of start of the crisis at the top, and then you move down straight through the first column like this. You record the medication being given, the blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen level, temperature, I froze, skin signs, sweating, degree of nausea, and behavioral changes. So this scale is potentially very useful, and you can all receive a copy to start using it now because it's available in the virtual FD Foundation swag bag or resources tablet from FD Day today. So we need your help now to complete it and give it back to us and give us your feedback so that we can fine tune it and make it the very best. Thank you so much for speaking with me or hearing from me today on the Access scale. And next we'll be hearing from Mrs. Zenith Khan, our fantastic nurse practitioner, who will be talking to you more about COVID-19 outcomes in people with familial dysautonomia.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. Oh, hello and shalom, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Zenith Khan, and today I will be talking to you about COVID outcomes in people with familial dysautonomia. So COVID has affected all of our lives, and today we'll be talking about current recommendations for COVID and FD, our statistics, how people with FD have tolerated vaccines, as well as those who are not vaccinated, how they fared with COVID-19. Lastly, we will advise how to move forward living in year 3 of the pandemic. So if you test positive for COVID-19, please notify your center right away. We can determine whether you are eligible for treatments to reduce your risk of severe symptoms or hospitalization. These treatments must be administered within 5 days of onset and are in short supply. If you do not already have a pulse oximeter and blood pressure monitor, please get one as soon as possible for emergencies. We advise each family member to come up with an isolation plan with your family in case either a parent, a caregiver, a sibling, or the patient themselves is sick. And if you were hospitalized in a center other than NYU, please give us a call very early on so we can speak with your medical team. If you test positive for COVID-19, the decision to escalate care and treat with antiviral pills such as Paxlovid or monoclonal antibodies is given in a case-by-case basis. The antiviral pills, what's important for you to know is that they can only be taken whole by mouth and they cannot be crushed or put through a G-tube. The antibodies, however, are given as an infusion or an injection. Patients who are asymptomatic or experiencing only mild side effects can use home crisis and antipyretic medication. However, those who are showing signs of respiratory distress, persistent crisis, hypertension, or blotching may begin antiviral therapy right away. What everyone wants to know and what we've gathered is first, FD patients do not appear more susceptible to catching the virus as occurs in other diseases that have severe immunosuppression. FD patients' immune system can fight the COVID-19 virus. We've had several cases of entire families being infected with COVID, but the only family member that had FD did not contract the virus. That being said, FD patients do have an increased risk of systemic complications compared to the general population. Through the natural history study, the NYU Dysautonomia Center is tracking COVID cases in the US, in North America, and all over the world, and in Israel. 43 cases of COVID were reported, 20 patients in the US and 23 in Israel. Sadly, one patient died in Israel prior to vaccination availability because of myocarditis, and this is very unfortunate. 14% of FD population contracted COVID-19 compared to 58% of Americans. In terms of how our patients fared with COVID, we had a 98% survival rate from COVID, Baruch Hashem. Patients in North America and Israel had similar rates in terms of how many tested positive. In North America, 25% of FD patients required ICU admission, 25% were treated in the ED and then discharged home, and 50% were treated at home with mild to moderate symptoms. All patients that were vaccinated had a good prognosis. Severe COVID and complications that we've seen. So as we've seen in the general population, the most severe complications occurred in patients that were unvaccinated. Those severe complications were most likely to involve the lungs, the need for mechanical ventilatory support, and affect muscles due to generalized inflammation. Just like other illnesses, COVID-19 infections can trigger autonomic crisis. Some patients took a long time to regain their strength and had not completely returned to their prior health status. Another notable observation was that FD patients could be reinfected with new COVID strains that emerged as the virus mutated in the community. COVID-19 vaccines are the most effective treatment at preventing you from severe illness, hospitalizations, and death. Almost all patients tolerated the COVID-19 vaccination and boosters with only mild side effects with both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines. We had one patient who received the AstraZeneca vaccine who reported some ankle swelling in their feet after getting the vaccine. The most common side effects that we saw were malaise, headaches, muscle pain, fever, autonomic crisis. And because of that, we recommend patients to take around-the-clock Tylenol or ibuprofen in the absence of kidney disease for 2 to 3 days following vaccination. All patients who adhered to this regimen tolerated their vaccines with little to no side effects. And patients who were not adherent to this regimen did report more autonomic crisis, and 2 patients had to be hospitalized for treatment of autonomic crisis. Something that's really important to note is that immunity is not absolute and it's not permanent. We urge all FD patients, their families, their caregivers, their teachers, anyone who's around your loved one to stay up to date with the latest booster to ensure lasting protection. Now that we're living in year 3 of the pandemic, we really advise for patients to not miss or delay doctors, PT, OT, speech, dentist, or rehab appointments. We want everyone to stay up to date with vaccines and boosters. Schedule an appointment either in person or virtually with us so we can review your medical history and see how you've been over the past few years. And in terms of at-home social support, we encourage everyone to eat and socialize outside if possible, monitor the rates and outbreaks in your communities. And if you are attending or hosting a larger gathering, encourage all people to do a home rapid test prior to attendance. Stay connected with us on Instagram, Facebook, or our blog for latest updates on COVID recommendations from our center. And up next, we have What's New at the Dysautonomia Center with Leanne and Mekki. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leanne. I'm a program coordinator and administrative lead here at the Dysautonomia Center.
Hi, I'm Mekki, and I'm the project assistant here at the center. We're really excited to be a part of FD Day today.
We want to share with you a few updates here that we have.
Sorry, give us 1 second. We're just okay. Sorry about that.
First, we've transitioned to a new answering service called Telemed. Telemed sends a text to the on-call provider within 5 minutes of a patient or caregiver placing a call. They will continue to contact the provider every 5 minutes until the patient's call is returned. This new system has allowed us to decrease provider response time so that patients and caregivers can get the immediate assistance that they need.
We want to thank the FD UK Foundation for their support and collaboration to create a new telehealth kit for families living in the UK. This new kit includes a device called Steth.io, which combines a user-friendly platform and a highly sophisticated stethoscope, which allows providers to listen to heart, lung, and bowel sounds in real time during their visit.
We know that people with FD have reduced temperature sensation and sweating, but how exactly do we measure these variables? We would like to thank the FD Foundation for their support in acquiring a new TSA2 device. This device objectively measures hot and cold temperature sensation. The device then provides data which can be tracked over time to monitor for any changes.
In order to measure the rate of sweating, we've brought back QSART testing. QSART uses electrical stimulation to activate sweat glands. The device then records a quantitative measurement of sweating.
We know that people with FD have trouble walking, but we need a way to measure this as well. Right now, we have the Mobility Lab, which is a new wearable technology. In the office, patients are connected to 6 sensors that allow us to quantitatively measure aspects of your gait and balance, including pace, arm swing, and stride length.
Our team is excited about these new devices. Information about gait, balance, temperature and sensation, sweating, and small fiber function will contribute to the ongoing natural history study of FD and provide us with objective endpoints that can be used in future clinical trials.
All of these devices that we've described today will be incorporated into the evaluation visits here at the center. While telehealth remains an excellent resource for families who are unable to travel to New York City, we do encourage you to schedule a visit to the center when you're able. We look forward to seeing you here.
Thank you very much. That was fascinating. I was very interested to know about your center. So I just want to thank everyone up to now. It's really been very, very interesting to get all these updates, particularly about the center in New York and what's going on with dysautonomia. So we're actually going to shift over now to our research session, which I know many of you are keen to hear the progress that's been made in the last year, and where we've heard something already from Horatio, so we're going to dive in a little bit more depth. So just to remind you, my name is Adrian Gilbert. I'm originally from London, England, but for many years now living in Israel. And in my day job, I work as a scientist in drug development. So I'm, of course, an FD parent to Tamar, age 21, who's watching. And I'm very proud, in fact, honored to jointly co-chair this FD Scientific Advisory Board with my colleague, Professor Francis Lefcourt from Montana State University. So we, as you probably know, have a very active scientific advisory board. And it's really been tasked with promoting original scientific and clinical research, collaborating with key researchers to urgently and as quickly as we can to find out and advance new therapies, to look for new sources of funding, and strengthen the partnership with the treatment centers which have already been discussed. We've managed to include some really world-renowned scientists and clinicians, both from academia and also from industry. And these are people with amazing records of achievement in other diseases, all of course volunteer their time. And we want to put their best efforts together to come up and to think together what meaningful and new therapies we can bring to FD. And we do, of course, work closely with the treatment centers in NYU and particularly Tel HaShomer to thinking about what research we can, the implementation of the clinical research. And as Horatio alluded to, I think the first, the oligonucleotide, hopefully that's something we can even look at in the relatively near future that will be able to begin clinical development. So a few words on our format this year. So after short presentations by Francis and Sue and Bat, we'll go into the combined Q&A session, which will be for clinical and research. So I already have a good list of questions which people were kind enough to submit when they registered. And we've actually tried to ask some of our speakers to address some of those questions. So hopefully we've given some of the answers. But what we're going to do is we'll dive into those questions with the panel as we move forward. And what we would really like also is people to post more questions in the chat and to be able to ask the panelists and really to put them on the spot, because the questions I've got, they've all been prepared up. And I'd really like to ask them some questions which they're not prepared for. I think that would be great. So without any more, I'd like to hand over to my fellow FD Scientific Advisory Board co-chair, Professor Francis Lefcourt from Montana State University, whose laboratory has been conducting research to increase the understanding of FD and to help us find new effective treatments. So Francis, over to you.
Okay. So Adrian, thanks very much for the introduction. And I'm just really happy to be here celebrating FD with all of you. Besides working on this disease, I'm also a cousin of two people that had FD, and it's a disease I care a lot about. So today, I'm going to talk about two things. One, very quickly, talk about what's going on in the gut in FD and in metabolism in FD. And this photograph here, which was taken by my lab, shows some of the neurons in the gut of a mouse, but our gut would look very much the same. And the other big question we've been working on is means for minimizing the blindness that often happens in FD, and as Dr. Kaufman introduced. Okay, so first I'm going to talk about our work on the gut, the GI tract, and metabolism in FD. And as you probably have heard, there's extensive communication between the gut and the brain. And so the gut is full of neurons. It's also innervated by neurons from the brain and other regions of the peripheral nervous system. And the gut is also full of bacteria, trillions of bacteria. And those bacteria and the neurons in the gut and the other cells in the gut and the brain all communicate with one another. And if that communication goes awry, then there are problems with bowel movements, constipation, diarrhea, and all of this whole axis between the gut and the brain also affects the liver, and the liver is the regulator of metabolism. And so if this circuit is dysfunctional, there's also going to be metabolic problems and nutritional deficits. And of course, all of these things also affect mood and can cause stress and anxiety. So we've been collaborating with the center at NYU and two other fellow labs at MSU, Seth Walk's lab and Valerie Copier's lab. And we have received very kindly from all of you, many of you, stool samples and serum blood samples. And we've been analyzing the microbiome, which is just the complete set of bacteria in your gut. And by looking at the stool and also analyzing metabolites in your blood and in the stool. And we find significant differences between the pattern of bacteria in the gut of people with FD versus relatives. And we see differences in metabolites as well. And the differences in metabolites indicate that there's some energetic stress happening in people with FD. So there's problem making enough energy. And so as a result, proteins and other metabolites are being broken down in an attempt to make more energy. We also find that the normal pattern of bacteria that are typically associated with health are often less abundant in people, in the stool samples from people with FD. We also, as Dr. Kaufman mentioned, we have mouse models for FD, and we can recapitulate many of these same effects in our mouse models, which then lets us, we have a system then, a platform for testing potential therapeutic strategies. We also find, interestingly, that if we co-house our mice with FD with mice that don't have FD, that the overall gut transit time, so the movement of stool through the gut, improves, and the overall health of the mice also improves. And this is the result of something that sounds a little icky. It's called coprophagy, but the mice eat each other's stool. So we will be, these results are being, have been submitted for publication now. We're waiting to get them published. And we are planning to work with Dr. Kaufman and Dr. Duarte to discuss all of these findings. They're of course involved with this work, and to discuss, how to translate these findings to therapeutics. The other major project we're working on is, as Dr. Kaufman introduced, gene therapy, where you introduce a healthy copy of the ELP1 gene. You put it into a virus, and you then can inject that into the eye. Now, gene therapy could be used, as Dr. Kaufman said, it could be used to do a systemic delivery, but we thought it was worth, for many reasons, starting with the eye and seeing if we could prevent death of neurons in the retina. And through very generous funding from Paul Wexler family and from the Dysautonomia Foundation, we are now making a vector based on the positive findings so far we're finding in mice. We're making a vector that actually could be used in humans. And I should say that this work has all been done also in collaboration with Dr. Claudio Punzo at UMass Medical School, who has considerable expertise in this area. We also are collaborating with Dr. Sue Slagenhaupt and Dr. Elisabetta Marini at MGH at Harvard. And as Dr. Kaufman introduced, they have been working with these small molecules with a company, PTC, that improves splicing. And so it's another approach for elevating levels of ELP1, which is the protein that's reduced in FD. And so in collaboration, we've made it our mice, the Montana mice to the Harvard mice. And so we have this hybrid model that then we can test both of our therapeutics in. And we've shown that their splicing compound also works well to prevent the death of the neurons in the retina that normally die in FD. And now we're doing one last experiment together where we're going to combine both the gene therapy and the PTC splicing molecule and see if the combination of the two would be even more effective at preventing death of neurons in FD. And so that's it. I really need to thank all the wonderful people who do this work and have supported our work, the wonderful people in my lab and my collaborators at MSU, Claudio Punzo at UMass, the people in the Dysautonomia Center, and of course, Sue and Elizabeth at Harvard. And I want to thank the NIH for supporting this work, Paul Wexler family, and the Dysautonomia Foundation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Francis. That was fascinating. Keeping up our rate. Now we're going to go over to Professor Sue Slogenholt, who you all know. She's the scientific director at Mass General Research Institute, and she's dedicated much of her professional life to the understanding and research of dysautonomia, including the discovery of the gene. So she's going to share with us some updates on FD research in her lab, which we're all eager to hear about. So over to you, Sue.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Get the slides up. Can you see this fine? Yes? Yes. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. I'm trying to, we can't answer the polls as panelists, but I was trying to think how many years I've been coming to FD Day, and I think it's close to 30 years almost that I've been with you at FD Day. So here I am back again. This slide just shows my FD team at the Center for Genomic Medicine at Mass General Hospital. And I just want to point out these people because they're so important to all of the work that we do. Anil is a retinal specialist. He's a junior faculty member. Ricardo and Daddy are bioinformaticians, and they do a lot of work looking at big data that we generate, looking at the expression of the gene that causes FD in different tissues. This is Emily and Jess. Just left our lab to go to medical school. So hopefully she'll continue her interest in working on FD. Emily will be headed there soon. And this is Dr. Elisabetta Morini. She's also a junior faculty member in the lab, who you heard Francis mention. And she's a driving force behind much of the work that goes on FD. So as Horatio mentioned to you, what my lab has really been focused on is to correct the defective splicing. And we started this work with the goal of developing a drug or a small molecule in order to correct the splicing in FD. And so, you've heard this for many, many years. I know you're all experts on this. What we're trying to achieve is in the normal case, exon 19 joins to exon 20 and exon 21 in the ELP1 gene, which gives us protein that works. When exon 20 is skipped, we have this mutant message and no ELP1 protein is made. And so the issue in FD is we have the skipping of this exon and we don't have enough ELP1. And so our goal is to develop a drug that could tell this gene to assemble properly. And that's what we've been working on. So our goal is to increase the amount of ELP1. So in addition to many other studies we have going on, we have worked with our starting molecule, which was kinetin that you've been hearing about. We found this, I think, in 2004 or 2005. It's a natural compound, but kinetin wasn't a good drug, as I've told you about many years. And so we worked through funding with the NIH to improve kinetin, which we did significantly, which brought us to this compound. And then we formed a partnership with PTC Therapeutics, and we developed 2 additional compounds, and we now have potency that's improved over 100,000 times. And PTC worked with us from about 2015 through 2019. They had a clinical development program that was designed to take one of these drugs to the clinic for FD. Now, unfortunately, for very many reasons, they canceled their clinical development project in 2019, which I've told you about. However, they've remained excellent partners to us and have continued to try to help us figure out a way to get one of these drugs into patients with FD. So we've spent the last year working a lot on this drug, PTC 258, trying to figure out if we had a way that we could get this drug into patients. It turns out we just got some results recently that we can't. There's just not a big enough safety window. And so now we're focused on this drug, PTC 680. And so we're working to find funding to perform the necessary testing. When you have a drug like this, there's a significant amount of testing that needs to happen on this drug before we can give it to FD patients. This is true for any drug. The issue is that we are working on FD and we don't have a large company behind us. So we are in negotiations with NIH to see if we can get them to pay for some of the testing that needs to happen on PTC 680 so we can get it to the clinic. Our goal with this is that we will develop an oral drug that gets to the brain and all tissues in the body. So this would be a drug that can either, you could swallow or it could go in the G tube and it would get to all tissues in the body, including the brain. And we've done a lot of work on both of these drugs in our mice. And as you heard Horatio say, we know that they correct splicing, they improve the gait, they improve the number of neurons that are in the dorsal root ganglia and other critical areas, and they improve the retinas. And prevent the retinal degeneration that we see in FD. So we're very excited about these. And I've told you for a long time, we're continuing to work. This is not an easy process to identify funding to get a drug into patients for an extremely rare orphan disease, but we're dedicated to continuing the work on this. So in addition, you heard a little bit about the work that we're doing collaboratively. I want to stress how much of a team effort this is among everyone that you're seeing today. So whether they're the clinical researchers at the center or in Israel and the fundamental scientists that are working in Francis's lab and in my lab and others, we're all working together, and we do talk and collaborate a lot together to figure out the best path. We're trying to we're pushing on multiple fronts to try to get some treatment to the FD patients. And what I want you to know is it doesn't matter to us which one gets there first. We're pushing them all so that we can get a treatment to the FD patients. So we work with Francis's lab on the gene therapy and other new ways to treat FD. We're continuing to test different therapies that both prevent the retinal degeneration and improve gait in our mice. And as I mentioned, we're working to find funding to do the testing necessary to get PTC 680 to the clinic. So thank you. And I'm really pleased to be here with you, and just know that we're continuing to work as hard as we can to move these therapies forward.
So thank you, Sue. That's really very exciting. There we go. Put my video on. So thank you very much, Sue. That's a fascinating update. We'll come back to, maybe there's some questions now popping up in the chat or in the Q&A, which we'll come back to when we're in the panel. I'd now like to introduce Dr. Bat El-Bar, who is my daughter's Tamar's doctor from Sheba Tel HaShomer Medical Center here in Israel. Bat is a pediatric pulmonologist who's the senior treating physician for FD at our FD Treatment Center. And over to you, Bat.
Hi, everyone. Very glad and excited to be here. I have 2 minutes, so I'll talk about 2 projects that are going on here in Sheba Medical Center. Horatio mentioned them in 2 words, but I'll take my time to elaborate a little more about them. So first, we have started a trial in Israel with Professor Miguel Weil from the Tel Aviv University, who works also with Be'er Sheva University. We started collecting skin biopsy from FD patients and family members. I'm taking the biopsy. Until now, there are no complaints. So then I give them to Miguel. He takes the fibroblasts in the skin, and those are being reprogrammed back into embryonic-like pluripotent state. These are called induced pluripotent stem cells. Then they are directed to develop into functional neurons. And the next step, that these neurons will be tested with more than 6,000 compounds that are all FDA approved, hopefully to find new compounds that we don't know yet. And they will be studied further to see if they can improve neuron function and survival. Till now, we have collected 4 samples. We have a grant for 20, so I think we'll get there soon. The second project that I want to mention is in the past year, with the help of Adrian, we recruited a brilliant researcher named Monique, who is now retired and spends time with her family. But once a week, she volunteers and comes to our medical center and feeds all the data that we have on patients to the software of the natural history study. And till now, all patients that signed the consent form are already in the database, which is very exciting. And of course, more to come. So thank you all for listening. Bye.
Okay. I think my video is on. Thank you, Bat. 2 very interesting and valuable initiatives. And now we're coming to the interesting part of the Q&A. So what we're going to do, I'm going to try and multitask, which is not my strength, but I will try and multitask. And I will very glad that there's someone who's going to be translating this into Hebrew. And I'm glad it's not up to me. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some of the questions that have been sent in to our panel. I think the panel is made up of people that I think some of whom you've heard speak, and we actually have a special guest. So we have Horacio, and we have Alejandra, and Patricio, who you've already heard speak, and of course Francis and Sue, and Bat, and we have Kaya and Zenith. And we also have a special addition. A guest is Dr. Leela Raju, who is an ophthalmologist who's working on the treatment of cornea at NYU Langone, and she's going to be able to hopefully answer any questions we have about treatment of eyes. So I'm going to start with my first question, which is to Sue. Sue, your question is, and this is straight to the point, what has to happen to get PTC 680 into the clinic, and when?
Good. Thank you, Adrian. Can everyone hear me okay? And see me, I hope?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, good. Okay, great. So once you get a drug to a certain point, we've already done a lot of testing on this drug, but you must test a drug and do toxicology studies, or what I'll refer to as safety studies, using a drug that is manufactured in a way that it's pure enough to give to humans. So we have to do manufacturing of this drug, and then we have a series of toxicology studies or safety studies that have to be done. The issue is that this costs us about between $1.5 and $2 million to do all these tests. It might sound ridiculously high, which I think it does too. However, there are many tests that need to be done, and they have to be done in different animal models. And from the time we get the funding, which I'm hoping to get through the National Institutes of Health, through NIH, it should be approximately 1 to 1.5 years. And then if all turns out well, which we're hopeful for given our preliminary testing, then we should be able to initiate clinical trials in patients.
Okay, thank you very much, Sue. I'm now going to go over to Francis. So my question to Francis is probably a similar kind of question, although I understand genetic therapy is very exciting and it's advanced, but when do you think we'll be able to get this, at least to start thinking about the preclinical development and hopefully into the clinic with gene therapy?
Well, thanks for the question. The first step was showing proof of concept in mice, and we're still trying to test sort of the see what are the maximal benefits we can get in the mice. So we're still optimizing the approach and the vector. But in addition, the key transition is to see if is making a vector that can then be used in humans. And so that's what we're working on now. The point is, once the vector's made, and this is the work that's been funded by the Dysautonomia Foundation. Once the vector's been made, we have to test that it expresses well in human cell lines and in the mice. That should happen by the end of the year. We should know those results. If that looks promising, then, like Sue, we will need some funding to then do some of the toxicology work to make sure it's safe. So typically what you do is you test it in other organisms like non-human primates typically, or other higher order mammals, and to see if it's effective in the eyes of those mammals. So that's going to require some funding, and then funding to then, initiate a trial. Once the vector's made, again, our focus has been on the retina, but we could also develop protocols to test it systemically. But we are not as far along as Sue, but we hope to get there.
Okay. I'm sorry I put you on the spot, but people are asking this question, so I think it was, an excellent
totally
answer.
understandable.
Well done. And now I'm going to go straight to Horacio, who also said that he thought that there could be the oligonucleotide potentially even by the end of the year. So can you give us some more details on that, Horacio?
Sure. Thanks, Adrian, for the... Well, this has been an exciting ride with the ASOs. I mentioned that they were used in spinal muscular atrophy successfully, together with, interestingly, spinal muscular atrophy has ASO, also has a genetic therapy, and has a small molecule. So the three of them are being used together in patients. So the hope is perhaps to do the same on FD. So let me go to the ASO. Adrian designed one that was published in 2018, and then in Lorem, this foundation that was created by the manufacturers of the drug, and they have enough funding, committed to do the type of toxicology studies and optimizing for human use that Sue and Francis mentioned for the other alternatives. So the whole team is meeting with this foundation every 2 weeks. We've been meeting since the beginning of the year. We have the protocol almost finalized, and we will be requiring from the FDA authorization to treat one patient, which is what NLOREM once agreed to do the toxicology for humans and allow us to start with one patient. And although it seems to be within a year, I learned not to promise exact times, but is actively being worked on. And of course, it's not as simple as taking a pill by mouth. So one doesn't preclude the other approach, but we hope that this perhaps will be the earliest that will go into clinical trial. Hopefully, Adrian, hopefully.
Okay, that's so encouraging and so exciting. We hopefully could be talking about clinical, which is beginning or starting to begin already at next FD Day. Because I know we've been, it was Sue who said nearly 30 years, and this hopefully could be the year when we really are starting to again, we're not promising anything, and it's not just up to us, but there really is something out there in 3 different fronts which we're trying to work and to push forward. So that really is very exciting. Just a word of warning. I understand Sue may have to leave early, so if anyone has a question specifically to Sue, please post it in the Q&A now. I'm going to go over to Leela, and I would ask you, please, to give us a little bit of your insight on the treatment of the cornea in FD, and particularly how you help people who perhaps have repeat abrasions?
Sure. Oh, can you hear me okay?
Fine, yes.
Okay. So I think I was just talking with FD team actually on Friday about, I think the most important thing is to always think of it in terms of prevention. Even if there is not something that you're actively treating at the moment regarding it, specifically an abrasion, it's all about how do you avoid it in the first place. So, you know, I think most FD patients are already using artificial tears on a regular basis, artificial tear gels at night. It doesn't always have to be an antibiotic cream or ointment. I think just the moisture itself, something that stays around on the eye better overnight, which the artificial tears don't do, just because it evaporates over time, and the gels do much better. I think moisture chambers, which can be bought online, either a single moisture chamber that looks like a clear pirate patch that the patient, anyone can see through, or even goggles work really well, because if you're doing something like CPAP, that might be blowing air into the eyes overnight. That's also going to be part of the problem. And then during the day, I think scleral lenses have made a huge difference in a lot of the FD patients I've seen. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a specific kind of scleral lens. I think there's a lot of good options. There is a learning curve, obviously, that comes with those, and knowing how to take care of them. But I think that has made a really great strides in being able to avoid those abrasions in the first place.
Thank you, Leila. I know from our own experience, so much of what you say is true, and eyes is something all through our lives. We're worrying about other things, but you never take your eyes off your eyes. Really have to make sure that we keep on top of managing our eyes. Okay, now I'm going to go over to Alejandra, and I wanted to ask you a bit more about what you said about precision medicine, and also maybe you could give us a bit more insight in what are the more common approaches that you have in the center. What do people consult you on?
Thanks.
Yeah, we see you now.
Before medicine, which is a different vision of medicine, which means that we have to be very hands-on the predictive and the preventive measurements. But also, for me, the most important thing is it's personalized and participative, which means that we need to understand what the patient and the caregivers want before we can actually provide a full plan. We can make directions, recommendations, but the idea is to have everybody involved before we do the actual plan. And it's very far away from traditional medicine, where it was a little bit paternalistic or maternalistic, where the doctors said, and that was the last word. So I think that's the plan. That's my approach to patients. And I don't remember the second question. What was?
The common consult. What do people come to you with?
Infections. I think that's the most common cause of consultations that we're having. Of course, we don't treat them lightly, because we know that infections can actually spread or be worse than what we think, because people are not complaining of. So every single, even little scar, we will get into the depth of how far, how difficult, how effective, what should we do to prevent further complications of that. We are a little bit more liberalized with antibiotics than in other special consults, I think, because these patients are so fragile that I do not doubt of being aggressive. And the other thing that I have in mind, that it's very, very complicated for me, and I think for the most people to understand, is the bronchoaspiration. I think it's one of the main things that we have to target right now, because I've been dealing with a lot of that.
Okay, if we're talking to you, actually someone asked, how do you increase low sodium levels?
Depending on why. I mean, it's not easy, it's not an easy task, and also it's dangerous to do it really fast. So you have to be very aware of how low and how much time the patient has had that low sodium. So that's something that we should go and do it directly, not the patient. However, what we find is that patients that are in crisis, they usually get low sodium, and we recommend to have half a teaspoon of sodium in the feeding while they are on crisis, because we know that they will end the crisis with a little less sodium than what they have with the hyponatremia.
Okay, thank you. That was a good, quick question about hypernatremia. Okay, over to Bat now. Someone's asked a very good question. How do oxygen concentrators work? And do they recycle air? So is it safe to go on a plane when people have COVID and use an oxygen concentrator? But
Hi, that's a very clever question. Concentrator works with a compressor that produces heat, and then the air that it comes from the air that we breathe goes to two filters that separates the nitrogen and the oxygen, and that is why that's an oxygen concentrator. And then the oxygen that from the ambient is around 21%, arrives to 95% with the oxygen concentrator. But during this procedure, using the heat and the filters, most of the COVID do not survive. So oxygen concentrator cannot concentrate the virus, so it's not dangerous. However, it's not a closed circuit, because it's not like a BiPAP that closes the whole mouth and nose. So you can still get the virus from the ambient, but not from the concentrator itself.
Ah, good. I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you. And I'm very impressed with your explanation. Thank you very much. I'm going to go over to Patricia now. I'm jumping over back to America. People are asking about the use of medical marijuana, or maybe even one specific derivative, cannabinol. Do you have any experience of this in dysautonomia?
Yes, that's a very good question. And we know that almost all medications that we take nowadays derived from some natural compound. Taking a natural compound by itself is a way to try to get a dose of that specific compound. So with marijuana itself, we know that we have had experience in patients with FD with a specific synthetic compound, which is dronabinol, that can help alleviate nausea in patients with different neurological disorders. Recommending smoking the marijuana itself, that can be a complicated issue. But can talk more about that, because it can have pulmonary complications as well. But dronabinol is a compound that is approved by the FDA. It's available and can help alleviate nausea in patients with FD.
Okay, Bat, do you want to add anything to Patricia's answer, our experience in Israel with this?
In Israel, we have 3 patients that had worsening in their morning nausea and started losing weight, and they were doing really bad. And they started using the CBD and the THC in a relationship of 1-to-1 with vapors, not actually smoking them, but using. First, they started with oils. It didn't really help, but since they're doing the vapor, most of them are doing much better. They gain weight, and it's not a trial, but it's just an experience of 3 patients that are doing really well with that with cannabinoid.
That's really interesting. That's something maybe we need to explore. Thank you very much for your answer. I'm going to go to Zenith now about FD, and if you can't answer, please feel free to ask your colleagues. So someone's asking us, can I attend an indoor social gathering if I wear a well-fitting KN95 mask? Or how safe am I when others are not? And I guess I could throw in the question.
Hi, thank you so much for this question. And Zoe, I love your Instagram. I love all of the posts that you put over. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end of that question.
No, go ahead. So we have a delay between us, so we run over a little. I apologize. So it was a question about the mask and safety, and also maybe if you could comment on the second booster.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much, Zoe, for your question, and also for all of your very informative posts about advocating for people with disabilities. I think it's really, really vital what you're doing in the community. And so to answer your question, attending any indoor social gathering carries some element of a risk. There are different levels of masks. So we have the cloth masks, which reduce your chances of testing positive of COVID by 56%. The surgical mask, which reduces your chances of testing positive for COVID by 66%. And then the KN95 mask, which reduces your chances of testing positive by 83%. That being said, a mask that's worn on your chin is not an effective way to wear it, and that is a 0% chance of reducing it. So, we really advise people to wear your mask, wear it properly. If you have any specific things that in terms of the fitting, we want to make sure that it covers the bridge of your nose. It's not soggy, it's not wet, it's not something that, is old and you've worn it multiple times and can sometimes cause some just wear and tear with it. So, replace your masks frequently, purchase them, and whenever you're going out in public, in any place that's outside of just your family, if you're in a public setting, definitely wear a KN95. Also, I think in terms of the second booster shot, we're advising all FD patients to be receiving it at least 6 months after you received your first booster shot. And, like I said during my presentation, we've had success with all patients tolerating it. But the most important thing that we can't stress enough is use around-the-clock antipyretics, to make sure that you're reducing your chances of having reactions. Everyone in the general population, reports some more fatigue or reports some more fevers for that 24 to 48 hour period after they get the vaccination. And for anyone with FD, we know that having a fever can cause some autonomic crisis. So even if that means waking up in the middle of the night and having your medications at 2 a.m., make sure that you are receiving it if it's Tylenol, in the absence of any liver disease, and if you don't have kidney disease, you can use ibuprofen. But yes, get the vaccines, get vaccinated, have your whole families vaccinated. And one other tip, Zoe, that I could add is if you're going to be in a setting in which people may not be wearing masks, but who those people are, ask them to do a home antigen test prior to hanging out with you. I think there's a lot of asymptomatic COVID that's going around. We're in our 5th wave right now again in New York with the BA2 variant. So we really just want to ensure that everyone is staying safe and as safe as possible while still doing the things that you love. Thank you so much.
Very, very, very much for your answer. I actually wanted to ask Leela a question. I know that she may have to leave soon as well. So Leela, we were asked about if you were aware of other eye treatments which potentially could be relevant to FD patients. And we were also asked a question about recommendations for pediatric moisture chambers. So if there's anything out there that you want to comment on, we'd be happy to hear.
Sure. Interesting. I think Amazon has the best options for all sizes of moisture chambers. It's amazing what you can get on that website. So I would try there first. It's probably the easiest in most countries since they do have such a broad presence across the globe. And then, I think there's some very interesting new treatments for, well, some of them are not so new. So serum tears, which can actually be made from a patient's own blood, I think can do a remarkable job in helping protect the corneal surface, in addition to the artificial tears that I mentioned before. There is also, and we were talking about this with the team just this week, there's a new medication called Tyrvaya. It is varenicline. So interestingly, it is a smoking cessation medication orally in the US, but they have made it into a spray, a nasal spray. So one, it's nice that it's a different method of delivering it. And also because it goes through the nose, and it may be using a totally different pathway to help stimulate tear production. And it's not counting on the whole feedback loop. The reason we make tears is because our eye is telling our brain we're not making enough tears. So if those nerves that are supposed to be telling your brain it's dry aren't working, then you got to find a way to bypass it. So either we do that by putting in the artificial tears, or perhaps this spray may have some benefit. Once again, it is a newer medication. I have not specifically asked FD patients to use it yet. So, but it may have a couple different benefits that, you know, it's a nice change of pace. Then, of course, there's a bunch of other medications that we use when there is already an abrasion that's not healing. Serum tears is one of them. And there are other medications, or one is called it's a generic or the compound is Senergermin. It's actually a growth factor that helps reconstitute some of those nerves in the cornea. That tends to be more when someone already has an abrasion, and we're trying to get it to heal up faster. And of course, there's a number of procedures, but like I said, the biggest thing is always, how can we avoid having to do a procedure? I think the eye does best when we've avoided that issue in the first place.
Yeah. Are there examples of tarosophy being performed in the
absolutely.
US?
I think it's an underutilized procedure for to avoid either abrasions or to help heal. Obviously not ideal for patients. I know they don't necessarily like having their eyelids slightly closed, but in the grand scheme of things, if it actually avoids the abrasion from recurring over and over again, because that's when you also get scarring in the cornea, and that, you know, opens a whole other list of problems. So if doing a tarsorrhaphy for either a short period of time or a little bit longer helps avoid that, or help one heal without scarring, I still think it should be definitely be more frequently considered than we often do.
Thank you very much. That was a very, very, very thorough answer. I'm going to go over to Alejandra now, and I've got a question for you. Is there a connection between homeostasis and FD? And perhaps there's one of the other physicians on the line may want to answer the question. Homeostasis and dysautonomia, is there any relationship?
Homeostasis, it's such a difficult question for the community now, because it implies that we have everything on balance. And every patients, what they have exactly is that they don't receive the information either accurate or on time. So they are constantly resetting the set points to get whatever they can understand and be more or less balanced in terms of homeostasis. So I think that as they are asking me the most complex thing that we are doing now, which is try to get them into the best position or the normal position, but baseline for these patients is different between each other. So we have to understand which is the baseline and where do we want to target.
Okay. Thank you. No, it's a very complicated question, but it's actually quite a good question. I'm going to ask Patricio now. Someone's asked us, how effective is meditation in dealing with crisis?
Oh, so that's a good question, and it's very complex, but if I can break it down simply, it depends on two factors. One is depending on how severe your crisis is, how severe it's getting, and the other one is how good you are at meditation. But we do have patients that, like I mentioned before, have been very successful in completely aborting crisis just by meditation alone. So it's completely a technique that it's worth trying out.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question. Actually, I'm going to ask. It's a question that's come out of Israel, a question about phosphatidylserine, which I know that there was some research done some years ago. So maybe this is a question I will ask. Maybe Bat, if you're familiar, are you familiar with this treatment? And is this something which has been shown to be effective? I'm curious to know, maybe either in Israel or in the US, if that's something which people are still trying.
For a long period, most of the patients in Israel were treated with high doses of phosphatidylserine. And from the OCTs that were done, I don't think that we saw any clinical effect.
Okay.
So most of them are not on this medication anymore.
Thank you very much for your answer. I'm going to go back to Francis with a question. It was something about, I hope it's okay that we're going between clinical and research, but I just want to follow up on something which was raised earlier on with regard to basic understanding in dysautonomia. Francis, why do neurons die in dysautonomia? What's the basic cause of that? Why does this ELP1 sort of mutation make neurons die?
So it's a good question, and we obviously don't know everything because it's turns out to be a really, really important protein in the cell. But one of its key functions is it associates with 5 other proteins to form a complex, and the complex is called the elongator complex. And that complex is essential for the translation of many different messenger RNAs in the cell. So it acts very upstream to regulate the expression of many downstream proteins. So if you analyze all the proteins in a cell, if you have reduced levels of ELP1, you find that many protein levels are altered. So we're affecting many different activities inside the cell, but one of the key functions we are interfering with if you have reduced ELP1 is energy, as I said before. So the big energy producer in the cell is the mitochondria, and we find that mitochondria aren't functioning normally. And if the mitochondria aren't functioning normally, the cell doesn't have enough energy to do all its normal functions. So but what's fascinating in FD is that some neurons are more dependent on ELP1 than other neurons. So that's why, so for example, the pain and temperature sensing neurons, they seem to really need a lot of ELP1 in utero. But the neurons that mediate the balance and the ataxia, those neurons don't need ELP1 in utero, but they need it as they get older, as patients age, their balance starts to take a hit. So different cells are more resilient than other cells, which is good news. I think I'll stop there.
Up to this point, I understood you, but I think you probably better stop.
It gets complicated, but energy is a big deal. Having enough energy.
Okay. I'm going to ask Horacio another question. I'm going to go back to the ASO discussion. When we spoke about it last year, we were talking about injection into the eye. Has that changed? Are we talking now about a different route of administration? Can you want to give us some more background on that?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Adrian. The way we were able to get into the program, I mean, maybe I'm telling you too many details, but the way we were able to get N-Lorem to choose FD, despite the fact that their focus is on diseases that are more rare, that's quite a paradox, right? We have 310 patients, and of course, this is a very rare disease, but N-Lorem works with ultra rare. So some of the patients are only 2 or 3 patients only for this program. So what we had convinced them was that the problem in the eye occurs only in young people. So then after that, the damage already occurs, and we were trying to only treat very young patients initially. Because of somewhat of a serendipity, because this requires testing in primates, meaning in non-human primates, meaning monkeys, and it's impossible to get monkeys now. It takes 2 years, right? Again, too many details, but because of that, they agreed to do it intrathecal, because to authorize intrathecal, they can do the toxicology only in mice and perhaps in dogs, but it's not necessary to do it in monkeys or non-human primates. So because of that, regulatory issue is that they agree to do it intrathecal instead of in the vitreal, inside the eye.
Okay.
So we were quite happy with that. We think it's easier. But also the amount they have to produce is much higher. It may not get to the retina with the same concentration, Adrian, but it does get to all the dorsal root ganglia and the rest of the brain. So we think that our target now is broader, and in addition to measuring vision, we are going to measure ability to walk. We think that this may also prevent the progressive worsening of balance.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's really it. You're talking about a potential upside and benefit from the drug if it's given, if you like, systemically or over the whole body in way beyond just the eye.
Correct.
So that's really is something, although it's at a greater cost to those who are going to fund development, which is good news for us, I guess.
Absolutely.
That really is good news.
Yes.
Okay. We've got a couple of minutes left. I've actually a question for Kaya. Was about, are there any innovations in perioperative management? In other words, preparing people for surgeries and operations.
Hi, sorry. So Kaya just stepped away because she's taking care of a patient who's in the ICU right now. So I'm back. So in terms of perioperative management, it's truly a case-by-case situation. We want everyone to call us before any procedures so we can discuss their cases specifically. We don't have a specific broad general recommendation. We really do care about IV hydration or hydration status of the patient to ensure their hemodynamic stability when they are in the OR, especially for procedures that are going to be lasting for more than 2 hours. But like I said, please give us a call if you are going for, outpatient procedure that's going to be, done in a dental office, or something that's going to be, much more serious and that's going to be requiring intubation or anesthesia management.
Okay, thank you very much. A question for Francis. Someone's posted three very good questions, but quite long questions. So I'm going to go with the first one. Something called the Resilience Project of Dr. Stephen Friend, or of Dr. Eric Stadt. There's an article about genetic data and understanding whether if you carry your genetic makeup can help understand the progress or the treatment of your disease. Is this something you're familiar with, Francis, or is anyone on our panel familiar with?
I'm not familiar with it. So you're talking about resiliency at a molecular
No, Resilience is the name
level?
of the project. It's a specific project we were asked about if we're familiar with.
I'm not, no.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking through the questions. Are there any other questions that I've missed or that we want to answer? I'm actually, as far as I think, we're now at 45 minutes or 40 minutes. So I guess it's time now, if I don't have any more questions. And by the way, if your question wasn't answered, I apologize. And we will try to address any other questions online afterwards, and I'll make sure that we try to do that. I want to thank everyone on our panel, including those unfortunately who've had to leave already. I think it was fascinating today to share the information, not just about the research, but also about what's going on clinically. And it's really been very interesting. And thank you everyone for listening.
And now we have my favorite part of the FD Day celebration. Each year, the team at the Dysautonomia Center recognizes outstanding members of the FD community. Honorees are selected for their courage in facing the challenges of life with FD when others would have given up. They remain resilient and strong. This year's honorees include a choir member, a recent college graduate, and a sports YouTuber. They are an inspiration to us all.
My name is Morgan Zachary Asanowski. I am 26 years old. I live at the city, Dora des Amants, which is in Montreal. When I was young, I used to do karate with my dad, and the color on my belt was red with a black stripe. I've been working on a core project with my dad to raise money for charity. Oh, on every Saturday, a woman comes to my house and we do art together. I like to sing. I have been going to a SEAL choir. It is a place where kids like me have challenges. We get together to sing for fun. I have a friend named Dimitri. I've known him for many years. We went to school together. And now we sing together. I am really proud to be part of the SEAL choir. My advice for the others who have FD is to do their very best.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm 26 years old and I'm from Barrington, Rhode Island. I had to figure out how to live healthy and have everything basically do myself. I couldn't rely on anyone. Pretty much I had to do everything and remember and remind myself my medications to get my Pedialyte ready for the next day. So yeah, those were my biggest obstacles, just taking care of myself without having to rely on it. I have a full-time job. I'm a medical secretary. I graduated in 2021 with my certificate of achievement in a medical office administrative assistant. In June of 2020, I graduated my bachelor's degree in social justice. June of 2017, I got my associate's degree. I really enjoyed the social justice classes. I like learning how to help people and just help our country and help society. I'm most proud of just graduating college with my bachelor's degree, having a full-time job. I'm working my way toward living my life independently, and in a few years, I hope to move out on my own. I love animals, yes. I started horseback riding when I was 3 or 4. I started in hippotherapy. Then I graduated from that and started regular horse riding lessons, and I've been doing it ever since. I have a dog. His name is Lido. He's a pit bull mix, and we love him. Our other 2 dogs passed away in November. Never give up and don't let your FD stop you from doing anything you want to do. You can pretty much do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Your FD does not define you.
Hey, what's up? My name is Mitch Topsy. I have FD. Let's get this started. It was about 7 years ago, and no, I did not start my YouTube channel this past year, where I had this friend at that time had 25,000 YouTube followers. I was like, dude, this is a great thing you got going here. Can you help me out? I want to start my own YouTube videos. And then he was like, sure. So we were talking. He gave me advice, he gave me tips on editing, and then I made my very first YouTube video, my introduction to YouTube. And I just loved it, and then I had 2 big series at that time. I had Movie Mondays and I had Video Game Review Thursdays. And people were commenting on my videos like, dude, I love your videos. And then it hit. I hit 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. That was the greatest thing that happened to me because I was making content. I was putting all this effort in my videos. I was working hard. People were commenting, liking on my videos. It was a great thing. And I loved it. And I loved every second of that. And then COVID hit. COVID, the pandemic, I could not go out in public. I could not see my friends. I already have a good following on YouTube. Why don't I make videos again? And that's what I did. So during the pandemic, I got my stuff together. I was starting to make a video every single day. My following was continuing to grow. People would comment, love, show appreciation. And that's the main reason I love my YouTube channel. I feel great because these people are doing the same things as me. I love having the great community that I have, and I love how my family gets to go out, talk to people about my YouTube channel. I got to interview Eagles writers, Sixers writers, a former Philadelphia 76er player in Spencer Hawes. I mean, that moment alone, just talking to Spencer Hawes, that's a moment I will never forget for the rest of my life. This is why YouTube is very important to me, because I get to meet great people, get to make great content who love my content, and just to talk, and people send me DMs appreciating me and stuff like that. Make sure you guys subscribe to my YouTube channel, Mitch Kopsky, as we're on the road to 2,000 subscribers.
Now it's time for the annual FD Day Art Competition. This year we are celebrating a very special anniversary of the World Through My Eyes annual show because it's been 13 years since its inception, making this year the competition's bar and bat mitzvah. The mitzvah year in the Jewish faith is deeply defining. It marks a stage of personal change, maturity, and spiritual growth in one's life that allows a greater capacity for connecting with others and with God and with seeking to do good deeds or mitzvot. This year, we set the challenge to create artwork that reflects these aspects. The response was unbelievable, and this year there are a total of 19 talented competitors who have created a truly amazing and diverse collection of paintings, drawings, digital art, photography, sculpture, and an original song and music video. We invite you all to visit the dysautonomiacenter.com following the show to review this year's artwork. So please visit and take your time to view each one properly. Sit with it, view at your own pace as art is intended to be viewed, and truly get lost in their unique and diverse beauty. As always, we invited a panel of esteemed, internationally recognized gallery curators and professional artists to help judge this year's competition and to offer their invaluable appraisal and commentary for this year's show. Thank you so much. And we would also like to take this occasion to honor our dear Dr. Lucy Norcliffe Kaufman, who created this competition for the FD community 13 years ago. What you did with this art competition and for the community is truly a mitzvah. Thank you, Lucy.
Let's start this show off with a bang because this submission blew us away. Judges and staff alike at the center were amazed by the level of talent and expression in this sculptural lamp made by Benny Tarian. This is more than a sculpture, it's a self-portrait. Judges were reminded of Frida Kahlo and how she would paint her own back braces and painted portraits of herself expressing her pain. Benny said, "I made this sculpture out of the back brace that I had to use after my scoliosis surgery. All the objects tied to it represent me, and all the wires inside it represent all the metal inside of me." The recovery from the surgery was extremely hard, and making the sculpture was a fun way to express that. Prosthetics on display is also a spiritual practice known as ex votos, which can be seen in shrines to saints associated with healing and protection from illness. These ex votos can be an expression of gratitude for healing or a prayer for one. Benny titled his masterpiece Unbound, portraying the brace as a cocoon that he shed and is now free from. This is a fantastic metaphor for the mitzvah year, representing growth and transformation. Furthermore, he made his brace into a lamp, so it's filled with light, and decorated the shell with all of the things he associates himself with and brings him joy. In doing this, he shows the light that's inside of him and that he is owning his malady and is the master of himself. In her abstract painting entitled Celebrating My Life, Alexia de Gunsberg uses bold and bright colors. On first impression, the viewer sees wildflowers, but in deeper appreciation, the judges were also reminded of the cosmos with planets and stars in orbit, or of a mandala, which also represents an all-encompassing universe and the interconnectedness amongst us all. The painting is very tactile, as if she used both brush and her hands. Judges were reminded of the Japanese painting style of gutai, which means concrete embodiment or bodily instrument, wherein artists actually use their hands, feet, and sometimes whole bodies as a means of painting. Gutai style calls for vitality and play, and you can tell that Alexia came back several times, adding layer upon layer, and that she really had fun painting this, which is the most important part. Kudos to Alexia for celebrating her life and how she feels in any given moment. With her stylistic choice and title, Alexia is truly celebrating her life. In Utopia Sky by Andrew Sigmund, he manages to capture not only a beautiful sunset, but all elements with water, earth, air, and sky that looks like it's on fire. There's a stark contrast between the brilliant sky and the dark buildings and landscape, but the sky is also connected and reflecting in the water below, making them unified. The eye is also drawn to a shining, hopeful light in the center of the darkness. Judges were reminded of the famous painting by René Magritte called The Empire of Light 2, which features this same stark contrast and illumination from a lamp. Our time living through the pandemic allowed our experiences to become amplified, to regain appreciation for small wonders, and allows us to be able to experience utopia wherever we are. In this self-portrait by Avi Zimmels, the literal meaning of this year's theme was captured as Avi posed for this photo on his bar mitzvah. Judges were immediately impressed by the transitional nature of the boy in the photograph. You can see that this is a photograph of a boy, but the young man inside of him is coming out. They got a firm sense of both the pride and kindness that Avi conveys. With his hands proudly holding onto his jacket, he looks like a good man, very honest. The composition of the photograph is also very interesting. The clean and hard surfaces of the hallway juxtaposition with the wild trees and vines inching just inside, reminding us of the Garden of Eden and leaving the natural innocence of childhood as we grow into adults. But Avi stands in the middle, on the threshold of the two. Also, Avi stands inside a long hallway with pillars vanishing into the darkness, and he is looking slightly up into the camera. In this way, Avi is looking up and looking forward as he grows into the man that he's rapidly becoming. This is a classic portrait, and judges gave Avi a 10 for style. Carrie Baker's advertisement photograph of makeup looks like classic pop art and professional advertising from the 1960s through 80s. The objects are positioned perfectly, with all labels displayed, and the coloring is bright and fun. This photograph captures another form of art that she's partaking in, which is drawing on the blank canvas that is our skin. The topic of makeup speaks to women throughout time and represents the practice of enhancing our features and can be an act of self-appreciation and love. As a young woman, she's showing her ability to enhance her beauty and put her best image forward. She's also displaying her serious talent as a photographer and businesswoman, as Carrie took this photograph for a business she created called Slash'em Beauty, which donates 15% of all profits to the FD Foundation. Franny Cohen looks very happy to be at work. In the modern genre of selfie, this photograph captures Franny smiling ear to ear. She is all dimples. The composition of the photo is also telling of her happiness and pride to be on the job. At the top, the word enjoy is captured, and the depth of field perfectly captures both Franny and her smiling coworker behind the counter. The connection between these two people and the sign on the wall showcase that the routine day of life at work is special for her, and Franny has the message to share that anyone can work with a disability. In this clever allegorical portrait by Gabby Jassy, she tells a story. She titled this piece FD Treatments of a Feather and says, "Each task in my life with FD is like a feather of a bird. They all go together." The image features her beloved pet Budgie Gibbs at the top, situated higher than the items and overseeing the process. Below Gibbs, Gabby highlights the items she needs for her health. She needs vitamin D because during the pandemic, Gabby and a lot of people have become deficient of this sunshine vitamin due to the increased time indoors. A blood pressure cuff is at the ready to monitor her for both highs and lows, and a gastroscopy extension tube set is available for fluid boluses she takes directly into her stomach, because she and many other people with FD cannot drink by mouth. Gabby is showing tasks that keep her healthy, but she's also relating an empowering message that with these tools, like the feathers of a bird, she can fly. Hannah Perelstein creates textile works of art in psychedelic patterns by practicing the form of art known as tie-dyeing. She says, "Rather than delving into a world of FD symptoms, I'm taking a plunge into a world of tie-dye." And as her work on display here says, she really is fighting FD. When Hannah tie-dyes, she can forget about her worries while she practices what she loves, and she's helping others to live life to the fullest too. This is because Hannah creates and sells her tie-dye clothing and accessories in her business called Kaleidoscope World, and profits go to a nonprofit organization she also had a hand in creating called YALA, which stands for Young Adults Living Life Always. Her work is beautiful, and what she does with it is a mitzvah to others with disabilities. The title of this piece is the name of her company, where she can be found on Instagram. Go Hannah! Joshua Keats dazzles again in this over-the-top and very fun photonovella. In this series of panels, Joshua tells the story of meeting a beautiful and kind woman. First, there's the encounter, followed by elation, and then a wonderful display of adoration for her, as well as his renewed bravado and self-confidence as the #1 bachelor. This photonovella is an emotional catharsis, as Joshua relives the moment and shares it with us as the viewers. As viewers, we're reminded of the power of kindness, connection, and love. Justin Sachs' depiction of a jellyfish is masterful, both in its execution and message. He titles the painting Lighting the Way and describes creating the glowing jellyfish for his dad because he lights the way and teaches his family so much. Jellyfish are oddities of the sea. They're peaceful, graceful, beautiful creatures. Some species can even glow, but they're also very powerful and can sting. This represents parents and family relations, which can illuminate the darkness, but can sometimes sting as well. The painting itself is beautifully done, and judges said his technique is very advanced. The contrast is so brilliant between the glowing jelly and surrounding darkness that it's as if the jellyfish is on fire. There's also a lot of motion in the painting, as you see bubbles floating up. It imparts an uplifting motion and vibe, and fits the bar mitzvah theme this year on growth and transformation.
Jackie Goldberg looks more beautiful than ever in this photographic documentation on aging she calls filtered and unfiltered. Jackie said that she has grown throughout the past couple of years, not only in the actual passage of time, but by figuring out what she wants to do in life and how she has lived life through different lenses. She's also learned that how you present yourself can change how you feel. Her 2 photos reveal this. The image on the left, with a slightly hazy tone, shows a ravishing young woman who looks mysterious and aloof, while the one on the right is a clear and close-up photo of a woman who smiles brightly, isn't afraid to be seen for who she is, and looks very friendly and approachable. This change in representation embraces aging gracefully, discovering who you are, and the richness of character that comes with time.
Michael Baranoff illustrates Captain America, the famous Marvel comic book character and alter ego of Steve Rogers, a frail young artist from Brooklyn who, after receiving a top-secret experimental serum, is transformed into a superhero. We believe this is Michael's story, having been born with FD, having had recovered from a string of illness in the last few years and trialing many medications. He's stronger, he's become empowered, and has finally been able to return back to work and is ready to take on the world. Judges appreciated the technical use of gradients in this sketch, allowing the image to have shape and dimension while only being in black and white. The title of this piece says it all. In Cruise to Happy Heart Island on 13 Waves, Morgan Asanowski created a blissful depiction of what's in his heart. Perpetually optimistic and kind, Morgan invites us to join him on his journey, surrounded by sunbeams on a yellow submarine, floating on 13 waves to a land of love. Judges point out the consistency of threes seen throughout the work. 3 people, 3 windows, 3 hearts, and on 13 waves, which may represent Morgan and his devoted parents. In this piece created by Mixed Media, Morgan draws, paints, colors, and clips his way to a special place in our hearts. Judges were wowed by this stunning painting by Peter Sonnenschein. In this cubist vision, Peter renders a celebrated moment in sports history when, as the title says, Allen Iverson, player for the underdog team, the Philadelphia 76ers, dramatically steps over Tyronn Lue after scoring a jump shot right over him as Lue falls to the floor. Judges praised the composition, pointing out how Peter used the entire space, leaving no blank spaces, and created an interesting composition. And they observed how everything is flat, but not by a lack of talent, remarking how it looks very intentional and uniquely dynamic. Here, Rachel Eisenson imparts her very special bond with her beloved dog, Chloe Rory. This image captures Chloe in minute detail, an image so perfect it looks as though it's made by a photo filter. But Rachel used her iPad to digitally draw every stroke of fur, glint of eye, and tiny whisker to properly represent her best friend. Judges commented that the photo conveys a feeling of melancholy and is an emotionally compelling piece, showing the connection between 2 souls. There's also a human aspect in the emotion emitted from Chloe, so you can tell this bond is very meaningful. They also said that this is a fabulous use of technology, is technically one of the best drawings, and could sell as an NFT. In this oil pastel by Mara Clausen, titled Memories of the Torah, she shows many layers of colors, and it's very complex. The tradition of transferring the Torah symbolizes how this holiest of books in Judaism has been passed from generation to generation for thousands of years. And with this literal and figurative transfer, there's a connection and a passage of tradition throughout the ages. A new Torah takes about a year to complete because over 300,000 letters must be drawn with the quill and special ink in the same way that the first Torah scroll was written by Moses over 3,000 years ago. The many layers and details of this painting represent this ancient tradition. Judges thought Rebecca Newman had a great sense of humor in relating her change over time as graduating from glasses to prose lenses, entitled From One Era to the Next. It's important to show that while some things don't change, like our reliance on visual aids, the styles and science of treatments evolve over time. They also appreciated the intentional use of perspective and care for the objects in this still life. The glasses look haphazardly tossed in the back, while the lenses sit cozily in the foreground on a plush paper towel. In this digital collage by Sam Landau, he is experimenting with technique, adding 3-dimensional imagery into a photograph. His use of shadows in the water under the letters spelling the title of the work, Paradise, are perfectly angled and make the floating letters look really natural. Finally, the letters are not perfectly aligned, showing that there are multiple ways to get to paradise and multiple interpretations of what paradise really is. Sydney Steiner has produced a masterful song with original lyrics, singing, and music video production, and our words are simply not enough to describe how heart-rending this is. This song and video captured the terrible disease that FD causes and the physical, financial, and emotional suffering of those afflicted. At the same time, Sydney uses her wonderful sense of humor to convey much of this suffering into ironic humor. The judges said the production was extraordinary and could be a political campaign that shows how much people with FD and rare diseases suffer. But truly, her lyrics speak for themselves, so without further ado, here is Sydney Steiner performing a one-of-a-kind treasure.
Hey, good morning. I wake up at 8:30. Thank you. Coming in to thank you. So I'm here. and some days they just is no longer fun. I jump in an elevator too. My life is a full-time job. I'm in pain. I'm in time off. My life is a full-time job. 1 hour, and no money. Time for awesome Zoom classes. Movie baby, music, and podcast, and sports. Time for compare men, and I jump. Sometimes I write songs in my free time. My life is a full-time job. I am paid. I am time off. My life is a full-time job. 1 hour, and I have money. Hang out with my family, doing dinner, talk about our days, time for pain for a day, for relaxing, for music, humor, and music videos. My life is like a movie that never ends. Every day is like the day before. It goes, waking up, it ends. I'm gonna go to bed. My life is a full-time job. I am paid. I am time off. My life is a full-time job. 1 hour, and I have money.
In this memoir by Veronica Segal, she reflects on her growth in a positive perspective. She writes about being happy that she could make it when she was younger, after suffering much autonomic crisis in her youth. But now that she's more mature and has less crisis, she's had a progressive decline in her vision and ability to walk. But through it all, she realizes that she's doing quite well and quips with timeless wisdom, "Definitely, we can't have everything." Judges thought her own reflection was embodied in this photographic memoir by use of contrasting styles of photography, highlighting how memories of the past can be romanticized and lead us to think only of things lost. But by showing herself in the new photograph, not posed and not romanticized, she displays the independence and wisdom gained with time. And the top 3 winners of the World Through My Eyes 2022 art competition are Sydney Steiner for My Life is a Full-Time Job, Justin Sachs for Lighting the Way, and Mara Clausen for Memories of the Torah. Congratulations, everyone.
Someone from outside our immediate FD family who has gone over and above on behalf of the FD community. I'm pleased to introduce Hank Ahrens, the recipient of the inaugural FD Champion Award. Hank owns an interior design business in Phoenix, Arizona, and has a successful track record fundraising for local causes, including Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and JDRF. When the Stillmans of Arizona became his clients, Hank grew close to the family, and he knew that he wanted to help the foundation that is dedicating to help keep Piper, age 7, healthy and happy despite her FD diagnosis. Working together with Piper's mom, Stephanie, Hank created the concept for Peeper Piper's Party, which took place last February in Phoenix and raised more than $140,000 for the foundation. But Hank hasn't stopped there. He is already working on another fundraiser for FD, planned for this November in collaboration with Phoenix Home and Garden magazine. When Stephanie learned of our plans to present this award to you, Hank, she was thrilled. Stephanie pointed out that she and Brian could never have made such an impactful gift to the foundation without your assistance and support. Stephanie hopes that others will follow your example by joining forces to raise funds for the foundation. Hank, it has been a pleasure knowing you and working with you. I am truly honored to present to you the inaugural FD Champion Award. A scheduling conflict prevented Hank from accepting the award live today, but here are a few words.
Thank you so much for this award. This inaugural award means so very much to me. FD Foundation and the Stillmans are near to my heart, and I'm very appreciative to give of my time and raise money and awareness for the cause. Thank you.
Congratulations, Hank. Well, it's hard to believe that another FD Day has come to an end. I am so grateful to everyone who worked so hard to put this program together, and I thank all of you for joining us for the 37th annual FD Day conference. I hope that you are heartened by the updates that you heard today, and I urge you to stay connected with the foundation and with the FD community throughout the year. Remember, the foundation is here for you. You will receive a post-FD Day survey shortly. We encourage you to complete the survey as your feedback is important to us and will impact our planning for next year's program. As a reminder, some of the materials referenced today are accessible in the resources tab at the top of your screen. You can send these to yourself using the swag bag function so you can take a closer look at them after FD Day. In just a few moments, our post-FD Day events will open right here on this platform. We invite our teens and adults with FD to join the FD Day after party, and we invite parents and others to join our schmooze with Dr. Alejandra Gonzalez Duarte. You can join either by moving to the lounge and clicking on the banner for the event. Thank you and see you next year. Lahitrot.